Here we have our new application, Agility 360, and this picture is it running on a Samsung Galaxy 9-inch Android tablet. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to define exactly what is Agility 360. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the hardware and system requirements needed to make it work. And then what are the differences between Agility 360 and Agility Mobile, which has been our solution for the past 10 years. I think I've been with the company for 11 years, and there was the RDP solution, Agility Mobile, came out just about 10 years ago. And then not only what's different about them, but what do they have in common? And then finally, is there any sort of an investment that you need to make Agility 360 work? So let's get started with the definition of what exactly is Agility 360. About 3 years ago, Michael Hollinger, our CEO and head of our development team, was tasked with finding an alternative to RDP because the Windows devices were being phased out. They were announced that Microsoft was no longer going to carry that forward, and the Android platform was going to be replacing that. So Michael did some research and some proof of concept, and then he handed that off to our senior software engineer, Bryce Lester. In the past 2.5 years, he and the rest of the development team have built out what you're going to see today, which is Agility 360. And it is our latest WMS platform, and it runs natively on Android devices. So what does native mean? Native means it runs directly on the device itself. It's not a client-server application. It's not using a remote desktop connection. It is software that is loaded on the Android device itself, and then it uses web service calls to do transactions in Macola or SAP Business One. So that is what Agility 360 is. So now let's talk a little bit about what sort of system requirements do you have or will you need to make Agility 360 work? As I mentioned, you need an Android device. In theory, it can run on any Android device as long as the OS is later than KitKat, which I believe is version 4.1. I wasn't 100% certain on that, but either way, KitKat's pretty old, so I don't think you'll have a problem finding a compliant device these days. But one thing to keep in mind is not every device is conducive to barcode scanning. You know, certain Android devices, even though the software will run on the device, it may not be the best choice for your environment. So in addition to the devices, here's a link to our website. And as Bob indicated, we'll be sending this out, so you'll have the link when we send out a follow-up email after this webinar. But our website does contain a list of recommended and supported devices, and it also lists the hardware partners that we work with that can provide these devices. And most of them are ruggedized and built for an environment such as the one that your employees and the applications will be working in. So in addition to the device, you need the WiSys client needs to be installed on a server running Internet Information Services, or IIS. The IIS server this would include a website and an application pool for hosting the web services. So we'll talk a little bit more about what an application pool is a little later. So as far as the IIS server requirements go, from a hardware perspective, it needs to have server 2012 R2 or newer. You need at least 2 CPU cores at 2 gigahertz or better. 8 gigs of RAM plus 2 gigs per application pool. And again, I'll give you a little clarity on what that is and why you would need more than one a little later. And then a minimum of 2 gigs of free disk space to install our application on, And as our software needs, it needs .NET Framework 4.7. And then there are specific IIS features that need to be turned on as part of the installation. Those are too numerous for me to go through here. And, you know, we want you to stay awake. So I'm not going to go through all that in detail. I'll have a link a little later to our online documentation that, you know, in our installation instructions for Agility 360 that details out what features need to be turned on. And then one of the great things about Agility 360 is if you have an Android device that has cellular capability, it's very easy to use our WMS applications outside the four walls of your company. So if you had a remote warehouse that doesn't have VPN or doesn't have ERP access or whatever, you could easily put an Android device in one of these locations or a field service application. And if you so in that environment, we would want you to have an SSL certificate or a VPN for security purposes. Just to keep the application and the data going back and forth secure, we would highly recommend an SSL certificate or a VPN. And then if you're going to do printing through the application, your IIS server needs to see network printers for us to be able to print to. We are, in a future release, we will have additional options other than that for printing, but right now that's the only one we have for right now. And then the next couple of notes are specific to SAP customers only. As a system requirement, you need to have the SAP DI API installed on the IIS server for both HANA and SQL applications. And then if it is a HANA environment, you will also need the database client. And then here we go with the application pools again. In an SAP environment, multiple application pools might be needed if you have more than 10 devices. And an application pool really is just, think of it as a place for processing to occur. So the nature of how the DI API works, we've, through our testing, determined that for about every 10 devices, we need to spin up a new application pool. For those of you running Macola customers, you will still need an application pool, but one is sufficient. And this little image here is an example of multiple application pools in an IIS configuration. So now let's get to the good stuff. What's the actual differences? You know, what reason, if you're an existing customer, what reason would you have to move to Agility 360 over Agility Mobile? So the first reason is what we said, you have to have an Android device. It is meant and built to run on Android. Agility Mobile, it runs on Windows CE, or it also runs on Android devices as well, and has for a couple of years now. When the Android devices first started coming out, our Agility 360 application wasn't complete or available, so we built an RDP application that runs on the Android device. So for those of you that are running older Windows devices and don't want to move to Agility 360 for whatever reason, you know, you can still get new Android devices and keep them and continue to run on Agility Mobile if you so choose. As I mentioned, it runs native on the Android device. Agility Mobile runs through an RDP session. Agility 360, you still need a server. This time it's an IIS server. Agility Mobile needs a remote desktop server. One advantage over over Agility 360 is you still need a server running IIS, but you don't have to buy remote desktop licenses. So for every device you are connecting through RDP, you had to buy a Windows remote desktop license. That is no longer a restriction under IIS. And Agility 360 has a smaller footprint, and Agility Mobile needs more resources. So a good example of that is we do have customers running Agility 360 already. One of those was a new customer that started with Agility Mobile. They have a lot of remote, very rural locations that did not have very good internet signal at all. They did not have a domain. So when they spun up an RDP server, they were experiencing some delays in the RDP transactions, and Agility Mobile, they were struggling because of their internet and their infrastructure to get it to work. So we switched them over to Agility 360. They got an SSL certificate, and even though these locations had very minimal internet, they were able to successfully execute transactions using Agility 360. So that's an example of what I mean by a smaller footprint. And then Agility 360, as you can tell by the icon here, it has a new look in a user interface. Take advantage of some of the technology. You can swipe left and right, scroll up and down with your finger. You can do a little bit of that in the RDP app, but not as much. So the Agility Mobile, although still a very valid and robust application, it does have a bit more of a legacy look. So let's take a look at what it looks like. So this is Agility 360 running on a new Zebra, and I believe it's an MC9300 device. And in comparison, this is a Windows CE device. So, it looks very similar, but the color scheme and the menu structure, here we had some tabs that you would click on for the various applications that the end user has access to. Here is you can use this down arrow, or as I indicated, if you swiped left or right with your finger, it would also switch to the next available menu, provided you have permissions for it. And then I mentioned we have customers running this already. So here is an example of a device from one of our existing customers. I don't even know what the make and model of this device is. I just know that it was around $500. So, there are definite options from a hardware perspective. So perhaps the biggest difference between the two is in Agility 360, because it is running natively on the device, we have access to features and functions on the device itself that we did not have access to in an Agility Mobile environment through RDP. So many of our customers through the years have asked, hey, could we take a picture of this shipment before it leaves the dock? Well, we really didn't have a way to do that, even if the handheld device had a camera on it. Well, now we do. We do have that ability now. So this is a little application that we built for demonstration purposes. It's called an appliance delivery application. And so when we open that up, the first thing we're going to do here is scan our sales order number. So we have a delivery truck driver out in the field, and it says that he's delivering a refrigerator and a dishwasher. So he's going to click on the refrigerator, and it's going to ask him for the serial number of the refrigerator that he's delivering. So we're going to scan that, and then, to prove that we delivered it. And then we're going to do the same thing with the dishwasher, scan its serial number to prove that we delivered it. And then he's going to click on the little pen at the top, the little icon at the top of the screen, and we're going to ask the person we're delivering it to sign for it, to acknowledge that we delivered it. And then we're going to click the button at the bottom that says Photos. And down at the bottom, you see two little icons. One's a camera and one's pictures. So you could choose an existing picture. You can click the camera as we did here. And we're going to take a picture of our dishwasher to prove that it doesn't have any dents or dings and is in pristine condition when we delivered it. And then we're going to do the same thing with the refrigerator. And finally, we're going to capture the address and the geolocation the geometric coordinates of where we were at when we physically dropped off these devices or these appliances. And then we're going to either do a confirm ship in Macola or a delivery note in SAP, and then upload these images to the shipment. So that is a real life example of how we can take advantage of the native application or the native controls and features of Android devices. So now that we talked about the differences between the two, what do Agility 360 and Agility Mobile, what's similar about them? Well, some of you may or may not know that our development team has developed two tools, one of which is called Agility Form Studio. And Agility Form Studio is what we use to write all of our applications that run on mobile devices. And so Agility Form Studio has not changed. Well, it's changed a lot actually, but that is still the platform that you would develop an Agility 360 application in, just like if you were familiar developing those for Agility Mobile. So the same designer is used for both Agility 360 and Agility Mobile. Likewise, any form created in Agility Mobile will run in Agility 360. So the WiSys, so if you're used to using the WiSys out-of-the-box PO receiving form in Agility Mobile, it's going to have a new look and feel to it, you know, new icon, and the colors are going to be different, but the form's going to function the same way that your users are used to it functioning. There are an exception to that, always an exception, right? In this case, the exception is if there's a user interface on the form somewhere before the completion of the form. So if there's a message box that pops up in the middle of the form, that's going to need to be rewritten. Not that you have to get rid of it, it just is going to have the order and the sequence of events in which that happens. Because this is web service call versus client server, that's going to need to be moved around a little bit. So in our standard out of the box forms, we used to have if you were serialized or lotted, we have what we called a serial lot collection screen that would pop up in the middle of the form. That has been rewritten in our standard form to use what we call a preload table. So there is an exception. And so as a result, you know, if you're thinking about moving to Agility 360 from Agility Mobile and you've written your own forms, or, you know, our consulting staff has tailored some forms for you, we're always going to recommend that you try those things out in a test environment first to make sure that they are going to work as expected. But for the most part, if you use an out-of-the-box Agility Mobile form, you're going to be able to use the same Agility 360 form moving forward. I think I might have skipped past. Yeah, there we go. So what investment is required to use Agility 360? For those of you that might be on this call that haven't invested in WiSys yet, just continue to work with our sales team to move that process along. For those of you that are existing customers and current on maintenance and support, this is probably where you know, you're going to see tremendous benefit. We take a lot of pride in constantly improving our product. We're constantly trying to make it better, make it easier to use, add more features and functionality. It's something we're very proud of. Like I said in the beginning, we've spent 3 years developing this product. It uses the latest in technology. It has a lot of functionality that we couldn't do before that our customers were asking for. And this is what maintenance, a big part of what maintenance pays for, is our investment in our software to continue to improve things and make things better for our customers. And so for existing customers, there is no charge for Agility 360. It is free. However, there are some potential needs for investment, most of which we've already talked about already. You do need an IIS server, so if you already have one of those, great, it's an install. If you don't, you may have to spin one up or add IIS to an existing server that meets the requirements we talked about. If you don't have Android devices yet, you may have to buy an Android device or 2 or 20. And depending on whether you're used to doing your own updates or whether you ask for our assistance, there may be some investment in that. And then there also might be some investment in redoing some of those tailored applications if they have user interfaces or something in the middle of the transaction that we would need to reroute a little bit. So from an investment perspective, if you're an existing customer, you don't have to buy Agility 360. It's included with your maintenance dollars, and there might be a little bit of hardware expense or implementation expense to go along with it. So what's next for WiSys? You can see Agility 360 in action. So on September 30th, which is a couple weeks from now, Aaron Armendariz is going to show our SAP customers Agility 360 in a webinar. And then the week after that, Bob Hawk on October 7th, you can see Agility 360 in action with Macola. And then myself or Michael, our CEO, sometime between now and the end of the year, we'll give you a sneak peek at our new Agility shipping solution, which is small package shipping, UPS, FedEx, USPS. We've always had that and integrated with ShipRush, but this is something we've written ourselves, which allow us to have a lot more tightly integrated, lot more integration with our shipping products and our pick pack products. So that's something that, again, we're very excited about. And then we're going to hold our first ever virtual user conference in the spring of next year. So there'll be more on that coming later.